In this video, we'll be covering some drone regulations, planning for your flight, some basic drone flying tips, advanced flight maneuvers, and some fun places to fly in Singapore. Not so bad, right? The drone shot. Now, if you ever wanted to get clips like that or just want to fly the drone for once, but you have no idea how to go about it, don't worry, I'm here to guide you. The main drone that we'll be using today is the DJI Mavic Pro 2. Now, depending on what drone you have, the control and settings might vary, but the flying operations and principles should be roughly similar. So don't worry, you'll be fine. Let's jump in. Now, we've all heard of the Pongo dude that flew his drone to take pictures of his neighbors. Yeah, don't be that guy. Before we even get to the drone, let's go through some general rules that you gotta know. You cannot fly over people, do not interfere or distract emergency services, only fly during the daylight, do not fly in no-fly zones, and lastly, remember to maintain visuals of your drone at all times. Now, you do not need to apply for a permit if you're flying recreationally, or if your drone doesn't weigh more than 7 kilos and you're not flying more than 60 meters in height. But once you have your hands on your new drone, you do need to get it registered. Simply Google UA registrations and follow the steps on the CAAS website. Now, it will cost you $15 to get your hands on this sticker, which you will eventually have to paste on your drone. I know it sounds like quite a bit for such a small piece of paper, but the fun of flying the drone is worth it, we promise. Alright, now that you're an expert on those regulations, let's plan for the flights. Usually before we go anywhere, we use the flyweare.sg and the One Map app to check for no-fly zones and obviously avoid those areas. And you want to find a place with as little buildings as possible because, well, the drones and the buildings, they don't really like touching each other. Heavily populated areas also tend to have more network interferences because everyone is watching the travel intern videos. Now, some of our favorite places to fly include the Bishan Ang Mo Kio Park, the MBS area, and also Clementi Forest. Now, the next step, you'll probably want to check on the weather forecast because, well, lightning and rain is not really fun controlling. And for you also lah. Do also take note of the wind speed as well. Anything less than 15 kilometers per hour should be easily handled by the Mavic Pro. Lastly, while you're at home, start up the drone and the phone to check for any firmware updates. Because the last thing you want to happen is for your drone to waste half of its batteries waiting for you to update in the field. Alright, now that you're finally at your location of choice, let's do some pre-flight checks. The first thing to check is if your drone controller and the batteries have enough juice. Make sure that the propellers are securely attached and the gimbal cover is removed from your drone. While you're at it, make sure to check that the camera lens is spotless and the vents are not clogged up by anything. Okay, now you can put your drone down on somewhere firm and level. Concrete floor works the best, but short grass works as well. Now start up your drone and hook your phone to the controller. Now the first thing we do is set the flight altitude to 60 meters and choose RTH mode. Now there are two RTH modes, static and dynamic. If you're flying from the same spot and not moving around much, choose the static home point. But if you're feeling like an expert and want to fly from a car or an F-16, choose the dynamic home point. Now this step is very important because should your controller lose connection with the drone will automatically return to the home point. Now once the home point is set, you will hear this.
The home point has been updated. Please check it on the map.
And lastly, check that the app says GPS flight mode. Now, it is possible to fly without GPS mode, but the drone will sway around in flight a lot. And this is not recommended if you are not extremely experienced in flying. You need a minimum of 7 to 8 satellites to connect to GPS mode. So move to an open area if you're struggling to get connected. Now, the best places to fly when you're just starting out is huge open spaces, so you won't have to get anxious thinking about whether you'll hit something when you're taking off or flying the drone. Also, if you lose control of your drone in congested areas, you might bring harm to other people. Alright, now that we are outside in the field, it's time for the fun part, the actual flying of the drone. You can either hold the sticks like this to start the propellers, or if you're lazy like us, you can actually just press the auto takeoff button. Nice, now that it's up in the air, here's a quick rundown of the controls. Pushing the left stick up and down controls the altitude of the drone, and left and right to control where the drone faces. The right stick controls the forward, the backward, and the lateral movements. And lastly, the scroll wheel controls the pitch of the camera gimbal. Now, just fly around at a low altitude to get used to the controls first. One practice you can do is actually flying the drone around yourself in a square, because it actually takes the coordination of both sticks. Alright, sometimes you'll fall into the trap of flying around aimlessly. So what you want to do is actually try to find a subject and focus your shots around it. Now, it also helps to do a quick Google search before you come to your location, because you only honestly have about 20 minutes before the drone flashes the low battery signal and you gotta send it back. Now, tip number 2. The auto mode on the drone has its merits, allowing you to focus only on the movement of the drone. But one downside of that is that when the light changes, the auto exposure also changes and ruins the shot, which is why it is worth taking the time to set up the exposure before recording. Now, although you can physically see the drone, sometimes it might be hard to gauge the distance between the drone and the obstructions. Hence, you should learn to trust the drone camera before you fly backwards or sideways. One safety tip is to spin the drone around so that you can check your surroundings for any obstructions. Or better yet, have one of your buddy keep an eye on the drone while you focus on nailing the shots. Now, final tip, depending on how far away your drone is, you might want to bring it back once the battery starts to get low. What does low battery means? Well, 30% is around a safe bet for most cases. Now, what you want to do is hover over a flat and firm area and simply lower the drone to land it. Or one simpler method is just to press the auto land function once the drone is closer to the ground. And congrats, now you have completed your first flight without destroying any property or killing any wildlife. However, it will probably still be very daunting to fly the drone. But as with anything, practice makes perfect, so keep on going. Alright, right now we are currently at a new location. This is the rail corridor, and I'm going to be talking about some advanced tips that you can utilize to get even better at flying the drone. Alright, first off, intelligent flight modes. There's a ton of flying modes that you can use to help you achieve cool and stable shots. Some of our favorite modes that we frequently use are sports mode, active track, and point of interest. Now, sports mode basically allows you to fly your drone at a much higher speed, but at the expense of stability and obstacle avoidance turned off. Now, active track basically locks the camera onto your subject while you're flying the drone, no matter what. And this is very useful in situations where, let's say, you're driving a car and you don't have any other hands to fly the drone itself. And the next mode, which is POI, point of interest mode, is really helpful in situations where there's a static subject like a building or you that you want to keep in the center of the frame. And the best part about this is that once you have set up everything within the controller, the drone does the rest for you. Alright, now that you have the basics of the drone settled in, the most interesting and dynamic shots are actually those that you combine both the movements of the sticks and the gimbal pitch. So from these shots, you can tell that the drone pilot is actually flying right, looking left, tilting the gimbal up and down, or going 360. Nah, I'm just kidding, you can't do that for the drone. Now, I know you just got your drone, you're very excited to fly as high as possible, get the widest landscape shot. But in reality, the best kind of shots are those that are close to the ground and closer to your subject. And lastly, once you are super comfortable with flying, you can turn off obstacle avoidance and get shots like this to wow yourself. Alright, you got this, champ, but do also take note that most of our accidents happen because we fly close to subjects. But sometimes, you gotta risk it for the biscuit. Alright, now that you have done practicing and sucking in all the knowledge, here are some of our favorite places to fly in Singapore. They mostly consist of huge open spaces, which makes it easy for you to spot your drone, take off, land, and practice your flight maneuvers. My boy Chow has done an insane video showcasing even more places to fly in Singapore. And if the video is out, you should see the link somewhere around here. So do me a favor and go check it out. And with this, we've come to the end of the somewhat masterful masterclass. Hopefully, you have picked up some useful tips and skills. Along the way, you might encounter a couple of unfortunate accidents. It happens to the best of us, so don't beat yourself up. Always remember that practice makes perfect and to never neglect safety when you're flying. And that is all from me. Have fun flying and we'll see you in the next video.